If you sat down to write a novel or a poem or an essay, and you had a tool in front of you that would destroy writer's block forever, or it could formulate any argument that you can think of, or generate any idea that you wanted, would you use that tool? Chances are you've already used it. And of course, I'm talking about AI, and it's had a huge impact on writing. Um, Impacts that a lot of people are not happy about and people debate, and it really makes people angry. A lot of the AI usage that happens today in writing. And what I want to talk about today is what writers stand to lose by using it. Um, and what readers also stand to lose. Um, and this is just my opinion on this. I'm not an authority on this topic. I just have thoughts. And I am not an AI hater either. I'd like to preface this by saying I do not hate AI. I am a software engineer. That's my day job, and I actually use it a lot, and I like it. And it's a feat of human intelligence. It's an amazing technology, and it'll be used for good as well um as bad, I suppose. Some of the things that we're not happy about, but it does have its place. Now, this video, I'm talking about art specifically, and specifically written art, like AI in novels, AI in poems, and I'm also considering only the using it in the majority case. For example, like there's definitely a debate to be had about can you use it for brainstorming? Can you use it for, all these different things? There's certainly a line to be drawn there that I'm not going to talk about. I'm talking about the cases like recently this year where a novel was published. There's a whole deal with this major publisher, and then they found out that most of it was written with AI and they pulled it from the shelves. So it's stuff like that where AI is the majority case. So first, what does the writer stand to lose by using AI? Well, writing can be kind of defined in two ways. It can be defined as writing, the act of writing, and it can be defined as writing the thing that has been written. So a book is a piece of writing. It's the final product. And then there's writing, as in sitting down with a pen or a keyboard and doing the action, right? So there's two things there. There's a verb and a noun. So of course, when we look at writing with an AI, if you use an LLM, you are outsourcing that action of writing to the machine, and you're just getting a final product, right? So you're boiling writing down to just the final thing. You're skipping the process of writing. And this is precisely where the problem is, where writers stand to lose. And it seems obvious, right? If you're not doing the action of writing, then you're losing out on, whatever that action provides. A lot of writers talk about how writing is not about the final product, it's about the process. So we can look at what some different writers have said about this process to see why it's important. So George Orwell wrote an essay called Why I Write, and in it he says the following. He says, "Writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. One would never undertake such a thing if one were not driven on by some demon whom one can neither resist nor understand. For all one knows, that demon is simply the same instinct that makes a baby squall for attention. And yet it is also true that one can write nothing readable unless one constantly struggles to efface one's own personality." So let's unpack that for a bit. Obviously, he mentions the struggle, right? Writing is, he makes it sound horrible. It's a horrible, exhausting struggle, like some long bout with a painful illness. So that sounds horrible, right? So what is the reason for that? Why would someone want to do that? He says further on that you can't write anything readable unless you constantly struggle to efface one's own personality. So what does this mean? This seems to contradict what the claim is here. If you put your own personality into the writing and that makes it worse, then why wouldn't you use an LLM? I mean, it doesn't have a personality. It doesn't get in the way of its own writing because it doesn't have its own thoughts or anything like that. But that's not what George Orwell is saying here. he's not saying to remove your personality from the writing. You have to read deeper into it. What he's saying is that you can't let your ego get in the way, your stubbornness to get in the way of the truth, because ultimately writing should be about talking about the truth or something as true as you can say it. And he goes on to say the following. He says, "When I sit down to write a book, I do not say to myself, I'm going to produce a work of art. I write it because there's some lie I want to expose, some fact to which I want to draw attention, and my initial concern is to get a hearing." So this is where his personality is, right? It's clear. He's looking at a lie he wants to expose, some fact which he wants to draw attention to. Um, this is something personal to him. That's part of his personality. And when he writes, only through that process is he able to explore these ideas that keep him up at night, right? And he mentions in the essay that this is what gives life to his writing. Another 20th century writer, Joan Didion, wrote a similarly titled essay, Why I Write, and in it she said, "I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see, and what it means." So again, it's a similar thing, right? This process of writing is how you think, it's how you learn, it's how you understand things. And if you're just outsourcing that to the LLM, you're losing all that. You're losing your own thoughts, you're losing your own personality. You're losing the thing that would make your writing unique to you. There's a reason why you can't copyright anything AI related. People have tried to copyright their AI work, and you can't because there's nothing of that in you. The person who, you know, the person who prompted it, there's nothing of them in the piece of writing. It's just billions of data points from the trained model that, it's not unique to them. And by the way, like, if you follow me on Substack, I just started a Substack. I wrote an essay on this, which should be posted at the same time as this video. That's exactly how I wrote that essay. I had thoughts and feelings about this topic, which maybe I can argue better in writing than I can speaking. Generally, that's the way I work. But, I didn't know exactly what my thoughts were on this topic until I wrote that. And certainly this video would be a lot more rambly if I didn't write that essay first, because I wrote my thoughts down. As I was writing, my thoughts and my arguments became clearer in my mind, and it revealed things to me that I didn't even know that I thought, and I learned things I didn't know that I knew. So the process of writing is so important for that. And to lose that, I think, would really, really harms the writer. Like, if we want to just think about books as a product, then yeah, you go ahead and use an LLM. But it's more than a product. It actually has real benefit to the writer. And there's no writer that I can think of that is famous. I mean, I can't speak for anyone, but I would guarantee if you talk to them, they do not write because they want the final product. A lot of them write because they enjoy the process. They have something to say, right? They're putting themselves into this work in some way or another. Whereas if you use AI, there's none of you in there. It's just emptiness. So enough about the writer. What does the reader stand to lose in all this? As a lover of books, if I got a book, there's no AI book written that has the word ChatGPT on it, right? It won't say authored by ChatGPT. It always has a person's name on it. And if I pick up a book with someone's name on it, I expect to hear from that person. I'd feel cheated if I found out this writer used AI to write their novel. One of the big examples I think of is Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. Like, do you think AI would be able to write that book? Cormac McCarthy has his prose is so unique. Like, AI would completely, I don't know, it would correct that, right? It would fix it. It would say, this is wrong. You should do it this way. Imagine if Cormac McCarthy listened to that advice. Like, we wouldn't have that iconic piece of writing. And not only that, like, Cormac McCarthy spent 20 years writing that book. Like, he traced the paths of the Glanton gang through Texas and Mexico. And, like, I think it would be a crime not to hear someone like that's point of view on it, right? Like I want to hear from his experience, and that's like that's the whole thing, right? Like if a man goes through such a, hard journey to write this book, he puts so much of himself into it. It's so individual to him. Of course, I want to hear his perspective. I don't want to hear like AI's factoids put mashed together about the Wild West. I want to hear Cormac McCarthy's human experience in coming to write that book. And, I think it's a shame that we would whittle down our experiences just to make a product. I think it just cheapens the whole experience of the reader, and I would probably stop reading. Like, no matter what, if I found out Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian was written by AI, no matter how good it was, I'd probably stop reading it just because I think reading is like a conversation between two people in a way. And that's been said before, and maybe it's a little dramatic, but I think it's true. You kind of get to peek into the mind of the author a little bit. You can't really do that with an algorithm. I don't really care what the thoughts of an algorithm are because it doesn't have any thoughts. It doesn't have any obsessions that keeps it up at night or that problems that it stews on like humans do. And so I think that is the big reason why it's important to me that humans write books. They always say, the old adage, write what you know, which is overused, of course, but what that really means is not like from information in your head. Don't write things that you know in your head. Of course, it's that that's going to be in there. It's going to be a part of it, but it's write what you've experienced, write the things that you have experienced, the emotions, the hardships, the happy times even. Like AI has none of that, and I think it can mimic those things, but it can't put them authentically into stories like humans can. Maybe someday the technology will blow everything out of the water and it will be like that. But it doesn't really matter to me. No matter how good the technology gets, if there's not a human writing that book, I don't care to read it. That's just my opinion. And I think it would be a tragedy to lose that connection between reader and writer, to replace it with an AI chatbot. So those are my thoughts. Writers, and as a writer myself, I'm also speaking for myself here. Don't cheapen the experience for the reader just because you want convenience. Don't turn the individual, the individuality that would be in your writing, don't trade that in just for a product. The process is important. The process makes you better. It makes you, it has health benefits even. Like I didn't even get into the science behind it. The process is part of the writing. The process is so important. To lose that is to also lose that connection you'll make with your reader. And I think that's one of the most important things. It's one of the reasons I like to read. I want to hear the perspective of a real human being. And I think going through that struggle of writing, of toiling over what the next word is worth it in the end because readers like me will appreciate it a lot more, even if they don't say it. If you write with AI, not saying you can't use it for some things, but if you use it completely, if you just take away all that struggle and use AI just for the convenience of it, you're going to cheapen the experience for everyone on both sides of the pen. And I think that's a big mistake. Anyway, that's all for me. You can check me out on Substack. I'll put a link in the description. I wrote a essay on this, and I'm going to keep writing essays and making videos hopefully every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, so check me out there. If you want to see a less rambly um, version of this, I have it on Substack. So thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.